Hello, Dan Kyle.
Hello, Richard. How are you?
I'm really well. Great to see you there in your studio up in the
Good.
Blue Mountains.
Yeah,
Dan, your exhibition is up in smoke at Martin Brown Contemporary in Sydney.
yeah,
And I guess, first of all, we should really come to that title, Up in Smoke, which I presume is a reference to the terrible season of bushfires over last summer.
yeah. It absolutely is all about what happened here and everywhere else in Australia. Um, where my studio, where I can still see burnt bush from here. So it was completely unavoidable when it was happening, and still unavoidable as a subject. Yeah,
You're,
it was
you're there
another.
in the Blue Mountains,
Yeah,
an hour or two out of Sydney, and very much an area that was hit by the bushfires. How close did the fires physically come to where you are now?
From the studio on Saturday, the 22nd, we had a southerly come in, and that was about 200 meters that way. So, and when that southerly came, that's when we unfortunately lost houses here, and days before as well. So, yeah, I mean, in meterage, it's like 200 meters.
Right.
So
The
it's pretty.
fires were really right on top of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I made myself very scarce though. So
Very wise. And look, one of the
yeah,
things that one must say immediately about this exhibition, as one looks through the range of works in your exhibition, um, and actually, I should quickly say a reminder to the viewer watching this that the idea of these interviews is for the viewer to go to the gallery website of the exhibition, find the exhibition page, have a look at the actual images of the exhibition, and have a look at them at the same time as watching and listening to our conversation, because we'll refer to some of those images. But those images in the exhibition, Dan, despite the terror and the damage of those fires, I would say have a wonderfully positive, almost celebratory
yeah,
feel. Are you aware of that? Was that the intention?
yeah, it was. We had uh, like my love of the bush just grows, every second. And with what happened here, I was absolutely devastated, and my community was, and so were my friends. And we spent time in the complete burn, and I hit the studio with, I bought black paint, which I've never had before, and within 2 weeks things were coming back. So I felt very like I wasn't a statement about the climate and all of the stuff that was going on. It was more about the resilience. So you can't avoid um, painting hope when things grow back so quickly. I mean, 2 weeks and there was green popping out of everywhere, and now it's still where it didn't burn as hot. It's like it hasn't changed. But yeah,
I love that phrase that you just used, painting hope. There's a
mm,
lovely sense of that in the exhibition, and one of the strongest motifs that comes through in almost all of the works are the paper daisies. In fact, I'm
yeah,
assuming we can. You're in your studio there, and even behind you on the wall, we can see some works where those paper. There they are. Right. Those are the real
everywhere.
paper daisies, but we can see them in the works on the wall behind you, and they're very, very
Mm,
present in the works in the exhibition. But they're a new motif, really,
yeah,
seems to have come into your work. Are they the symbols of hope?
yeah, definitely. The idea originally started just purely because of abstraction, particularly Emily Kimwari. Um, I had her images all through the walls in here, and I just, yeah, it sort of came from there, and it was a total accident one day that I just did it about a year ago, and then it just became the symbol to portray that regrowth.
Yes. Can I get you to hold those flowers up again, because we may have missed them previously if I was talking. Let's just have another look at them. And you may need to speak, so so we get to
Yeah, so this is a paper daisy. There's a lot of them. It's a helichrysum. People do think that they are weeds here, and they kind of are. They don't actually grow in the bush here. But they come up after fire, after earthworks, when the ground's been shifted. And I just think they're beautiful. So, and you can paint and print with them. So,
tell us a little bit about that combination. You say paint and print with them. You've been doing a very interesting experimentation in terms of technique. Tell us what you've been doing.
Yeah, well, I paint each individual daisy multiple times until it's retired. Like they fall apart eventually, or they get stuck in the paint, and then I just print very slowly. I don't know. I thought it was a bit of a thing at the start, and then I just think I love doing it. It feels like meditation, and they really translate really well sometimes.
So each of those paper daisy marks that we see on the paintings, each of those marks has actually been in contact with a real paper daisy.
That's right. There's no splotches, dots or anything. So it's all that motion. It's time consuming, but I've never done anything ever that has been time consuming and I've stuck to it. It's I don't have the patience, but for some reason and then the colors are just so beautiful. Can't not love them and love, the lusciousness.
So. Well, you say that you don't have the patience, but I think one of the things that one would have to say for anyone who's followed your work over quite a number of years, which I and I know a lot of other people have enthusiastically done, is that actually it does seem to have been very patient work. Your motif of the pale eucalyptus trunk has been something that has very, very gradually evolved. It's not something that you've rushed through. All of your work seems to have evolved very slowly and carefully and gradually over a period of time. And that does suggest patience.
Thanks.
Well, at least it suggests kind of immersion in that, real meditation about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, sometimes, I feel like I'll go through phases where I feel like I'm painting the same picture but I think, like there's something into devoting your life to one subject and one that is all around me. And I've been doing it for a long time. I love gum trees, love them, everything about them.
You certainly seem to. Let's go to some of the individual works and just talk about them a little bit. And I wanted to start maybe even in terms of a timeline, although we're not going to be strict about this, but one of them is entitled October Haze. So I guess in a way before the real fire season, right just at the start, very early days of the fire season. And yet there's a wonderful almost golden yellow light in that work. Did you have any, well, you couldn't have had a sense at that stage of just how much smoke and burning was to come. Tell us about that work and the feel of it.
So that work, October Haze, and also November, December, which is in the show, they were both before the 22nd of December.
Mm.
And not unlike the rest of the country, we were just shrouded in this beautiful, but also very dangerous, disgusting smoke haze that, I mean, it was like one of the most beautiful things, like an early morning or a fog or something. And the light just changes completely, and you don't get to experience that atmosphere ever unless, you know, something really bad is going on. Unfortunately, the entire Wallamay National Park was on fire, which is that way. And yeah, in between plumes of smoke that we could see over the paddock, we were just, like everyone else, covered in just thick smoke haze. And yeah, that was definitely
that smoke haze, as you were saying, actually provided an atmosphere which was quite beautiful, or which you have captured as being quite beautiful.
Yeah.
Can you give us a sense with those works that you mentioned, October Haze, and then the other work, November and December? It's a very large work in the exhibition. You capture that sense of the environment and the atmosphere, but what's your approach? Do you go out and work on plein air with sketches or small works, or do you work substantially in that environment, or do you bring it all back to the studio and make it happen there?
I do like a fair bit of on plein air work, but only ever really small things, and then they always end up here, and they don't usually ever leave. But I bushwalk every single day, pretty much, which is such a part of my practice now. I used to think I wasn't doing any work, but it's all work out there, you know, observing. So yeah, they all start just in the studio. All the works in this show were all started and finished in here. But yeah, it's painting in the studio, but it's right there, and it doesn't feel like I'm in a studio. Yeah, so
you carry. It sounds to me as though you're carrying what it is that you've absorbed, maybe even in the bushwalk that day. You're carrying those images, those details, and then literally seeing them in front of you, even though actually you're in the studio. You're still almost there in that place that's, in fact, only just outside the studio.
Yeah, it feels, it's, you know, gaga to say it pours out of you, but it does. Like, you can't help being, you know, affected by your environment, and particularly when your environment is going through what it was going through. Yeah.
What is your in your studio there? What is your approach to painting? What sort of a painter physically are you? Are you very quick? Is it very spontaneous, or is it very gradual and slow? How would you describe it?
Everything starts really fast, and it might sound like a bit of a dance party in here, and I have the music going, and there's a lot of energy, and all the initial mark making and all the background stuff is just so fun and all over the joint. And then over the weeks, it just sort of gets pared back and pushed back, and I don't know, will leave things that should stay, or, you know, covet, you know, mark making before, and you shouldn't, but I want to leave things. And yeah, so it starts really fast, and then it just really slows down, and then gets a bit meditative now, apparently.
Well, that meditative quality certainly comes through in these images, but you also mentioned a little earlier in our discussion that you know, because of the fires, because of the smoke and the haze, you'd brought black paint into the studio for the
Mm.
first time. And let's go to one of the works in the exhibition that is somewhat darker, has some of those darker elements. That is Up in Smoke, literally, the title of the exhibition and the title of this work. Was that one where that darkness did start to creep in?
Yeah, it started pretty dark. And I bought lamp black, and painters will know that as soon as lamp black hits white paint, the color is like blue and grey. And so I didn't, that happened because it was too black and then too white and blue, and then I just kept rubbing all this other color into it, and it stopped being black and was more about, I don't know, there were greens, there's all sorts of colors coming through. But that really got...
How do you decide on those colors? Because there are incredibly rich and some really very bright color combinations in these works, and yet overall, when they are combined, there's a tremendous softness to them. How do you find that balance?
The balance, the softness always comes at the end, because I sort of, when the painting is dry enough or tacked off enough, I'll rub over it with a little bit of terps or a little bit of colour. So it's collecting little bits of paint that isn't dry.
Mm.
And so I don't really have a say in the matter. It just sort of, it happens because some things are dry, and then it just makes this beautiful, I don't know, what do you call it?
It is literally almost a kind of smoky atmosphere that you manage to bring in, which pulls all of those colours quite softly together. But there's also, in your more recent work, you mentioned the paper daisies and the process of applying paint with the daisies themselves, but there's also been the introduction of some quite small, subtle elements of collage into your work. Why did you take that step?
I got given a book, and it's full of, a lot of them are Western New South Wales plants, native plants, but we do find a lot of them here, particularly all the gums we've got here. I just started ripping them out. It's a beautiful book. It's called What Bird Is That? And they're all Neville Cayley's drawings, illustrations. I don't know.
So there's been a bit of book vandalism going on by the sound of it. But those elements, those small elements, are then ending up incorporated into the paintings.
Yeah, they always get covered over quite a bit, or veiled, like with paint or something. So they aren't as prominent, but and some people don't. It's actually pretty nice when, viewing the picture, someone might take, some people can take a year of it being on the actual wall and they notice it. And I think that's really special, because the bush is like that. You don't see it all. It's all hiding. And then after a while, you can find things that have always been there, but you've never seen. So that's kind of, I don't know, that was an accident, but it's kind of nice.
A lovely parallel to the ecology of the bush experience, and I'd like to finish with that sense of optimism that you expressed in terms of the life and the regeneration of the bushland around you, with the work Hope and the Ground. You used the word hope a little earlier in your description of some of the paintings. Tell us about Hope and the Ground and that sense of hope in all of the paintings in the exhibition.
Well, I mean, back to bushwalking as well, and that painting and all the other paintings. Like, if you like bushwalking after a fire, a hazard reduction would be nice. I'm not a complete inferno, but walking with so much ease through the bush because you're not fighting off sticks and branches coming everywhere. And because the ground is so barren after fire, that 2 weeks comes along and it's all happening on the ground first. That's where it all starts. And yeah, I mean, yeah, that's where the hope for the country was. It was just on the ground. So, yeah.
And you could see it there at your feet, just as we could see your works on the walls, or perhaps on the gallery website if people are looking virtually rather than being able to visit the gallery. But Dan Kyle, thanks so much for sharing your exhibition with us.
Thanks, Richard. Thanks for having me.